think we're all set. Okay. Good afternoon. I hope everyone's having a great day. I am April Vogel, and I'm joined by my colleague, Mike Oster, and we are your two reps for the Retired and Separated Caucus at NGAUS. Thank you again for taking the time to join us on our virtual seminars. We are excited to bring you a sort of a specific topic today. But before we jump into the qualified charitable distributions discussion, we wanted to talk about a couple of things, a couple of specific items. I'm going to talk a little bit about the discussions we had at the NGAUS conference, and then Mike's going to give you an update on our board meeting. I am really excited to tell you that we had a great retired and separated caucus luncheon at the Milwaukee NGAUS conference. Our hosts did an amazing job at the Harley-Davidson Museum, and the luncheon was very well attended. I want to tell you that we tried to stay away from a lot of PowerPoint slides and a ton of speeches, and we really tried to focus on engaging the retirees and separated community. We were really trying to hear directly from the attendees and understand what matters most as we think about strengthening NGAUS and, of course, our connection to our retired and separated members. Mike and I are trying to focus on encouraging our retirees to be more active partners in shaping the Guard's future, because we recognize just how much talent there is in this population, and we're trying to find ways to make this caucus more than just a time we come together and talk about TRICARE or opportunities for us to talk to the VA. And so we spent a little time initially by bringing retired General Frank Grass up, the former chief of the National Guard Bureau, to speak to the group. Mike had spent some time talking with me, and then also obviously General Grass, about ways in which we might be able to tap into some of the talent that we have in this group to help not only NGAUS but the National Guard Bureau tell our story with that enormous reservoir of experience and leadership and influence we have in this population. We've been talking about ways that we might be able to capitalize on that experience, and where appropriate and where needed, use that pool of folks to help tell the National Guard story. This is just in its infancy. Started having conversations with those different bodies, but he spoke a little bit about some of the ideas he has to that body, and so more to follow on that. But we do have a sort of one of the very best sponsors we can on our team and on our side with that. So after General Grass spoke to the group, we went to our tables and started some conversations sort of with the group, and posed the question, what do you believe is the most important issue facing the National Guard today? And the conversations around the table were really lively and extremely thoughtful. We didn't have a ton of time, but Mike did have a chance to go around every table and sort of give everybody a chance to provide feedback on the themes or the highlights that happened at each table. Some of the things that emerged that kind of came across consistently around the room was the need for consistent modernization and readiness, recruiting and retention challenges, the importance of strong state-level engagement, the need for better communication across the retiree community, and ensuring the Guard story is clear and understood at the national level. These discussions highlighted just how much insights exist in this community and how much value our retirees can bring to NGAUS as thought partners and advocates. So we didn't stop there. If you'll remember, back in 2024, when we were on the boat, we gave everybody a survey. We gave that same survey to this group as we got ready to end the luncheon, and we asked 7 questions. So after we did the survey with this year, I took that data and sort of merged the two to try and get some trends between the 2 years. So just to kind of give you all an overview, the 7 questions we've asked the participants is how productive they feel the meetings are, what ideas you have for future caucus meetings, your view of the top 3 to 5 issues NGAUS should be working on right now, and whether you would be interested in serving on a strategic advisory committee. That's a key question as we move forward. We also asked ideas to increase retiree engagement at the state and national levels, and then feedback on how NGAUS can improve communication with retirees year-round. And then finally, we asked for any constructive feedback to help us improve retiree engagement and strengthen this community. From 24 to 25, the amount of responses we got significantly increased, but the survey is going to really help shape our work going forward. It's kind of going to give us a roadmap for how we bring the community more fully into the fold. And while we're still refining those results, we did get some themes that I want to share with you all. I think some of the most important themes are that the retirees and the separated members want more consistent engagement throughout the year, which is why we're trying to do these seminars more regularly. There's also a strong interest in structured opportunities to contribute, especially through those advisory roles. Many want closer connection between state associations and the retiree community. And then there's a real passion for advocacy, for helping NGAUS to tell the GUARD story and advance the GUARD priorities. So if nothing else, the luncheon confirmed that the retirees and the separated community is not only willing, but eager to be a part of NGAUS's future. So as we move forward, we're going to take these insights from the luncheon and we're going to try to, I think somebody has a hot mic. We're going to try to put those efforts into that strategic advisory committee. So Mike and I are going to work with NGAUS on the next steps to establish that committee and then hopefully see some of these ideas turn into action. And we're also going to continue to work with General Grass on potentially finding opportunities to tell that story in conjunction with NGAUS and the National Guard Bureau. So I'm going to stop there and answer any questions if there are any. And then give Mike a chance to weigh in or back me up on any of the things that I offered.
I think you did a great job of covering it, April. I appreciate your comments, and the feedback on the surveys is really valuable, as you've indicated, and we're going to continue to use that information to try to make decisions going forward. So appreciate people participating in that, and I don't know if we'll do another one this year, but we'll definitely keep doing them in the future and maybe they'll be more targeted and specific as we go forward. But no, great summary.
Excellent. Thanks, Mike. Well, then, if there are no questions, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you for the board meeting overview.
All right. Thanks again, April. Appreciate it. And thanks to everybody that's on the call. We appreciate you making the time to get engaged and learn more about what's going on. This is just our attempt to provide more communication and information about what's happening. These are, of course, also being recorded. And so for people that can't be with us today, they can go back and watch the recording and see some of that information. Just a super high level overview on what happened at the Board of Directors meeting. If you've never seen the agenda for one or been to one, they are pretty standard and static in what we cover. There's a lot of reports, NGEF reports, the Army and Air Company Grades report. We give a retiree report. All the entities, the NGAUS, industry, everybody provides a report. And then when we're fortunate enough, we have the Army and Air directors from the National Guard, and sometimes we'll get the chief of the National Guard Bureau. They're actually really good about coming to our board meetings and providing insights and overviews of what's going on. The big takeaways for me, and there's lots of things in both the Army and the Air that are going on. You see them in every few days, we get an email that gives an update on what's going on at the federal level and on the Hill. But the big takeaway on both the Army and Air side right now was, I think that recruiting is really strong in both of our organizations. And with all the things that are happening right now across the country and the things that you're seeing the National Guard be asked to do, I think that's telling about where we're headed as an organization, as far as people still wanting to serve, and they want to serve through an organization that keeps them involved at community, state, and nation level. And hopefully that continues, right? There's, with all the things that are going on. So additional things that they talked about, again, I'm not going to go into details on those because of time, for one thing. And I'm certainly not a subject matter expert to talk about them. But Space Guard, of course, came up. Army Aviation restructuring came up. They're willing to answer whatever questions we have, which has been really great. So I would encourage you to take a look at those NGAUS notes that are coming out and the information that summarizes what's happening in both the organizations. You're probably aware during the shutdown, there was a push to try to get our troops paid, right? Pay Our Troops Act and that kind of thing. And NGAUS did a push for people to send letters or electronic letters through email to their congressional delegations. So I know that some of us in this community, the retired and separated community, were people that did that. And I wanted to make sure and say thank you for taking the time to do that. But I also know, based on the total number that we have, the actual number that engaged was a pretty small percentage. And so we want to work together with this group, with the people that show up for this call, with the people that show up to the annual meeting. We need to figure out how to engage the rest of our community in the retired and separated world. These are people that are connected to our congressional delegations, probably on a personal level in many states. And so getting this group engaged in those kind of things is going to be essential, especially as we continue to see we're getting back to where the budget between the Army and the National Guard and the Army Reserve and the Air Force and the Air National Guard and now the Space Guard, or excuse me, the Space Force, the budgets are getting tighter, and so things are getting more contentious, and our ability to influence Congress is going to be more important now again than it's been for the last few years, where it really wasn't a fight. And I shouldn't call it a fight, but it's a little more competitive to try to get those dollars. So for those of you that did the letter writing or the email, appreciate it. For those of you that didn't, I would ask you to think about that in the future. But really, the bigger thing is we have to engage the community outside of the ones that keep showing up for these things. Another great deal of discussion in the board of directors meeting that's important to all of us as members of NGAUS was on the budget. And again, if you track this kind of thing, or if you've seen the budget, this won't come as any surprise to you. If you don't, it may come as a huge surprise. But NGAUS is an organization as long as I've been on the board of directors, which is between my time as an Army Area 5 rep and now a couple of years as the retired rep, we have run it as deficit as the NGAUS, the organization. And the reason we're able to do that is because we have a surplus that comes in from the memorial building. So that enterprise is a completely separate budget entity from NGAUS. And so we take some of those profits and we move them over to NGAUS to cover down on our shortfall. That continues to grow. That shortfall has continued to grow. And one of the things that General McGinn took on as a goal of his when he took the job as president was to try to get that budget closer to, we probably won't get to break even and we won't get to balance, but we should get to where the surplus that was required from the building is much smaller. This year, we were projecting about a $2.5 million requirement from the Memorial Building Fund over to NGAUS. And based on some projected cuts and some proposed cuts, we've gotten that down under to closer to almost 1.6. And that's going to cost some programs. Committees all were looked at as a 50% cut. There was a big discussion on the company grade committee and whether we cut funding there or not. There was initially a proposal to cut funding. The money was put back into that organization. The strategic plan committee, which has been budgeted $25,000, they cut a bunch out of that one. They offered to take even a little bit more out, but that's a very big muscle movement right now for what we're doing. So almost a 2-hour discussion just on the budget. And one of the things that was talked about was, the general conference is the largest revenue source and the largest expense that we have in the organization. And right now it's probably, we're probably spending a lot more money than people realize on things like brunch and lunch and some of those kind of things. And the people that actually participate in it, as a percentage of the total are not that great as far as, is it worth the huge expenditure that we have? And so I applaud the staff at NGAUS for taking a hard look and making some aggressive recommendations to try to get us more in line with where we're at until we figure out some additional revenue sources. So as you all know, when we're doing our personal budgets, if I don't have additional income, I have to cut expenses. And so that's kind of where we're at right now. But we're also looking at creative ways to raise revenue, again, probably mostly at the general conference. But there's other opportunities to do that as well. And they've recently got some additional tenants in the building. So the building's at 86% occupancy right now. That's the highest we've been probably in 10 years, maybe even longer. So NGAUS is being very diligent with the organization and being good stewards of our dollars and our income. Membership revenues are not trending up like we hope they would, and so we're continuing to try to be creative there as well. So because that's another significant source of income. So a great deal of discussion on that as we were pushing forward. I chair the General Conference Committee, and April serves on that committee as the retired rep to it. We spent about 8 hours in that committee meeting. I think it's the longest meeting we've ever had. I hope it's not just because I was chairing it and I'm inefficient. I think it's really because we covered down on so many things and had a really, really good meeting. One of the challenges that we have right now with the General Conference Committee is each year we put out a solicitation for bids for states that want to host the General Conference. In the last couple of years, we have had very little participation. In fact, this year we only had one bid to host the 2030 conference. And there's nothing wrong with the bid that we received, but the fact that we don't have other states that want to do this is kind of problematic as far as I'm concerned. And plus, many of the places that we're going are continuing to rebid the conference, and our membership has told us they like going to different places, they like different venues, they like to see different parts of the country. So we're going to ask this community to be stewards for the conference to try to help us get to the current leadership and maybe take on a significant role in planning and preparing for the execution of the conference, because we in this community are probably not rotating out. We're not going to rotate out of being a retired and separated person, but the current tag might rotate out, and the current chief of staff might rotate out. The current executive director for the association could rotate out, but we can be the static person that sticks around and can actually go from bid to execution on a conference, because it's a 5-year window. And so we have to figure out a way to get other states to apply for this, to the point where we're actually going to solicit specific states and specific cities that we think our membership would enjoy going to, and try to get them to start bidding on the conference so that we have a little bit better opportunity when it comes to the things that we're doing there. So there was a big discussion on that as well when we got to the board of directors meeting. After we talked about the deficit and talked about some expenses and income and different things that were going on, there was just a good discussion and additional reports that came through for the board of directors. Those were kind of the high points that, from my perspective. I'll open it up to any questions, and I'll turn it over to see if April has anything she wants to add to that as well.
I don't think I have anything to add, Mike, as you did a great summary as well. I have a quiet group today.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, I see a hand here. Brian Beekman, did you have a question for us? Brian?
Brian, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Right. It looks like he says looks like I can't unmute. Brian, if you want to type, the question. John Harris is saying mics are disabled.
I think Michael's got them all muted, so we don't have feedback, but I think he undid Brian's. Brian, can you try again to unmute maybe? Or maybe we just enable all the microphones, Michael, and we'll get people to mute if they're. Oh, looks like they're enabled now. Oh, Brian, I can see you. Let's see if I can hear you.
Yeah, looks like I got kicked out when I was trying to unmute. Sorry about that. I'm Brian Beekman, retired Oklahoma Air National Guard, retired 2 years ago, previous full-time active duty and Air Force Reserve before that. My question is about the NGAUS engagement with the VA administration. Recently, they've touted that a lot of the backlog has been reduced. However, my experience is different. On March 31st of this year, my VA claim after my retirement, been waiting a couple years for that. I've had two separate claims. One was an update to my claim amount based on my previous active duty service. And the second was to restart my benefits because they suspend your benefits when you go on active duty with the Guard or Reserve. The update claim was approved, no problem, but the restarting of my benefit was actually closed on March 31st. And then on April 1st, the exact same claim was reopened. And I thought it was an April 1st joke at first, but it was the truth. And it seems to be that in at least my case, the VA was hiding the fact that my claim was open for over 2 years, and they closed it and then reopened it with the same information just to make it look like my claim was a new claim. And so it's still been ongoing 28 months later, haven't been getting any benefits. And as a retiree, when you already have a benefit approved and you budget for that benefit in your retirement years and that, benefit doesn't restart, there's a issue there with that monthly budget that you think you were going to have. So wondered what NGAUS's engagement is with the VA and to see if this is happening to other people where the VA may be hiding the fact that there are claims that have been open for a long time and they're just resetting them or restarting them and not looking at the previous evidence. Thank you.
Hey, Brian, I'm going to take a shot at that, at least start the conversation. And this is a great opportunity for me to tell everybody on the call that Major General McGinn, our president from August, and then Eric Leckel, our chief of staff, are both on the call as well. I am, and I just saw John Eisberg put a note in there. So I'm actually going to ask John if he's available, if he could jump on and talk about what he just posted on there. So those, again, just want you to know that those three, again, all retirees, by the way, are our top three people at NGAUS right now. And so they are on this call with all of you today to answer these kind of questions and take input. So Ice, if you're available, can you talk to that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, April. Happy to be on the call and happy to be a retiree as well. So, one of the things that as I come into the position that I realize is, we were working things on the Hill, but we weren't really inside of the various organizations to include the Veterans Administration. So we reached out to them, connected with them, and had our initial meeting this week, and we sat down and kind of got to understand one another a little better. And as we educated one another, we just realized that we are not living up to our potential, and for one, on policy issues, but two, also, veteran service organization issues and assistance. So we jotted down a plan of attack, and we're going to start working together a lot more closely. These specific individual issues that was just mentioned, these are things that they want to know about. I shared some caveats about how the Guard and Reserve are kind of viewed inside of the Veterans or the VA. And unfortunately, as soon as a lot of the folks who are doing things at the VA see Guard on it or Reserve on it, we kind of go to the back of the line. And they are aware of that in the front office. So these are issues that we need to know about so we can advocate on your behalf.
Okay. Hey, thanks, Ice. I would say more to follow on that. And Brian, I don't know if you can send a note to me specifically, since you're an Army guy, I think. But you can send it to me. I'll give you my email address. Actually, I'll drop it in the chat, and then I can work with the folks at NGAUS, and we'll try to get you a little more information as well. So Ice, I'm going to ask you, since you're right there was another question that came in from Mike Bridges asking if any known funding cut threats to the challenge program. And so can you address that as well? I'm not tracking, that's not come up. So can you address that real quick?
I don't have any specific information of cuts. I didn't see any in any of the bills so far this year. I do know it's a discussion, though. It's a discussion point on the Hill for future support. So if folks in the field are seeing things, let us know about it so we can get involved.
Okay, thanks, Ice. Looks like we have another hand raised, April.
Tim Tim Marler?
Yes, that's correct. Thank you. I just want to add on to what our gentleman from Oklahoma said. I think if when we engage with the VA, if we could get a veteran service officer availability to be accredited as the guard, because I've worked that with the American Legion. That was my job for the last 4 years.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's actually, I shot Brian a note and asked him if he had been talking to a VSO. I think that's a really good point, Tim.
Well, I'm saying that as NGAUS, if we're going to engage, we need to be listed as an accredited organization and be able to have people within our state be that veteran service rep so they can go, because we do have the experience to do that. And I can tell you, there's people that I personally helped get their claim fixed that the other VSOs were just saying, oh, hey, you're the guard, just kind of what you had said earlier. So I would be happy to serve on a committee or a task force to try to make that happen.
Awesome.
Gotcha.
Thank you. Thank you, Tim.
John's got his hand up. I think he wants to jump in on that, Mike.
Okay.
Yeah, I do. So I did talk specifically about that issue, and Frank and I have talked about this in the past, very preliminary stages. But the one thing the VA responded to was they cautioned us in doing that. And while there's a lot of great VSOs out there, there are other organizations that the VA is a bit concerned about. And if anybody followed any of the hearings on the Hill recently, there's a lot of VSO organizations out there that are preying on veterans. And so it's the hope of the VA to get to a point where we no longer need VSOs. The current secretary wants to get to the point where they can veterans can self-serve online via either an app or their website. I know that's not a perfect solution, but as I mentioned our interest in getting into that space, they cautioned us, but they want to have some further conversation on that.
Hey, Mike, it's Frank here too. Just to kind of pile on that, we do have a meeting coming up in December with the Undersecretary of War for Personnel Readiness, Anthony Tata, on a host of issues, MSO, VSO issues. By the time I responded this morning, I didn't make the in-person meeting in the Pentagon, but we will be online on Zoom on that call. So we can certainly tee that up with them. And what John isn't mentioning, John Eisberg, is we're on a lot of calls with the the House Veterans Affairs Committee, and we liaise with them routinely as well. So John's new inroads with the VA itself is just another step in what we're trying to do. So we'll certainly tee it up on that meeting on the 17th of December and make sure it's on their radar. Over.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate that.
All right. If there are no further questions, Mike, are you ready for me to turn it over to Curt?
Yes, ma'am. That'd be great. Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you for that summary, Mike, and thanks for everyone for jumping in. I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce and thank our next speaker, Mr. Curt Sheldon, who is the owner of C.L. Sheldon and Company here in Alexandria, Virginia. He is a veteran himself. Air Force veteran. You can see his fancy model behind him. I reached out to him and asked him if he would take some time to speak with us today. We had specifically asked if he would give us a little talk about qualified charitable distributions, but he's also going to speak a little bit about some tax efficiently supporting charities. We were hoping to sort of tailor this to potentially supporting our NGAUS charitable donations, but we are talking about this in the big picture. So I'm going to turn this over to Curt. Thank you for being with us today, and you have the floor.
Thank you, April. Happy to be here today. I'll go ahead and share my screen with you real quickly with the group, and I'll go ahead and get started. I'm not real familiar with Teams, but it looks like my screen is going, so I'll go ahead and get started. So, as mentioned, I'm a military veteran, Air Force, 27 years, retired about back in 2010 and started a business, and have been working tax and financial planning with primarily active and retired military members. And we're going to talk a little bit today about tax efficient support to charity. So things we're going to talk about are kind of my two golden rules, if you will. And then we'll talk about the qualified charitable distributions, the primary thing we came to talk about today. But then I'll talk about some other things that can help you efficiently support charities. We'll talk about donor advised funds, donating appreciated assets, bunching deductions, some changes coming due to the One Big Beautiful Bill Act that will affect your 2026 taxes when it comes in regards to charitable contributions. We'll talk real briefly about some advanced use of trusts, and then a little bit about charity beginning at home. So the first of my golden rules is don't donate to charity to save/make money. I fairly routinely get questions of, should I sell my used car or should I donate it to charity? And it's a pretty good example of why this doesn't necessarily make you money. If you sell your car, you're going to get the fair market value of that vehicle. If you donate it to charity, you're going to get a deduction for the fair market value of that vehicle, and that deduction will reduce your taxes by some percentage of the amount, whether depending on your tax bracket. So what I like to tell people is support charities as you are moved to do, how you feel the right way to do it. And then once you make that decision that you're going to support charity, then do it in the most tax efficient way possible. If uncle wants to help you pay for it, then go ahead and let him. And then another thing to keep in mind, really when it comes down right down to it, with a couple exceptions, cash is not king when it comes to supporting charities. You're generally much better off donating assets than you are donating cash because of some things we're going to talk about a little bit here in a little bit. So we'll talk about qualified charitable contributions first. The acronym, they're called QCDs. I'll talk a little bit about the rules, and then more importantly about why they're so valuable. So the first rule when it comes to QCDs is you have to be 70 and a half years old. And who comes up with 70 and a half? Only Congress. Kids when they're 5 or 6, they'll tell you they're 5.5 years old. But for some reason, 70 and a half years old is the threshold for this. And unlike most things in the tax code, you have to be that age when you make the contribution. A lot of things in the tax code is based on your age at the end of the year. That's not the case when it comes to the qualified charitable distributions. You have to literally be 70 and a half years old or older when you make the distribution. The distributions have to come from an individual retirement account. And a lot of people will use terms interchangeably when they're talking about a retirement account. They may use individual retirement or say IRA when they really mean their 401k or TSP or 403b. Basically, if it's a plan that your employer set up, you cannot do a QCD from that account. You can only do a QCD from an account that you set up as an individual for your retirement. Now, that doesn't mean you can't transfer funds from one of those funds like a 401k, TSP, or a 403b to an IRA and then do the QCD, but you've got to take that step to get the QCD, get the money into the IRA before you make the QCD. Probably not a problem for most of us, but QCDs cannot exceed $100,000 per year. So that is the limit per year. The distribution must go directly from the IRA trustee to the charity. You can't have control of the money. Now, with that said, what most custodians will do is they will write a check made out in the name of the charity. They'll mail it to you, and then you send it to the charity. Sometimes they'll do direct contributions, but more likely than not, they're going to send you the check that you mail to the charity. that is in control of the money. You don't have the money. You can't cash the check. You're just the delivery person at that point. The QCD has to go to a qualified charity. So basically what we call a 501c3 charity is in most cases, so you can't give it to your brother-in-law or anything like that. It's got to go to a charity. And then there's this kind of weird rule. It used to be when you turned 70 and a half, you could no longer make contributions to an IRA or to a traditional IRA. I forget which one of the recent tax laws changed it, but now if you're older than 70 and a half and you have employment income, you can make deductible contributions to a traditional IRA. For QCDs, if you make a deductible contribution to an IRA after age 70 and a half, you have to reduce the QCD amount by that same amount that you put into the traditional IRA. And it kind of makes sense if you step back and think about it. I make a deductible contribution to a IRA, and then essentially shortly thereafter, I take it out and don't have to pay taxes on it, and I get the charitable contribution. It's basically preventing double dipping with a deductible contribution and a non-reportable distribution. So those are the rules. Why do I love QCDs? They are probably the most tax efficient way to support charity if you qualify. And that's because QCDs are excluded from income. That money that comes out of the IRA and goes to the charity never gets added to your reportable income. It's most effective once your RMDs kick in. And for most of you, if you're not doing RMDs already, you're going to be required to start doing required minimum distributions at age 73 or age 75. So that's when these really become effective, because now you have to take out money and you can make some or all of that excluded from your income. It's also very effective because you don't need to itemize deductions to get a tax advantage from the contribution. And the fact of the matter is most retirees, especially those age 70 and a half and older, probably don't itemize. The mortgage is likely paid off. They don't have a lot of state and local taxes they pay. So this gets you the advantage of contributing, of excluding this money from your income without needing to itemize. And what's really most powerful with the QCD is it's not included in your adjusted gross income. And your adjusted gross income is the most important number on your tax return, because your adjusted gross income controls everything or other things on your taxes. For example, the amount of your Social Security that you pay taxes on is controlled by your adjusted gross income. The more adjusted gross income, the more of your Social Security that's going to be taxable, up to 85%. Now, for military retirees, that may be a moot point, because a lot of times your retiree income will already put you above the threshold where that full 85% of your Social Security is subject to taxation. But other things are affected by your adjusted gross income as well. The ability to deduct medical expenses, which retirees do have. Medical expenses are subject to a 7.5% of your adjusted gross income floor. So the first 7.5 that of medical expenses that you pay are not deductible. The lower your AGI, the lower your the effect of, or the more of your medical expenses that you can deduct. A lot of credits, again, some of these apply more to probably a younger cohort, but education credits for college educations are controlled by adjusted gross income. Child credits, several other credits are controlled by AGI as well. And starting this year, we have this new no tax on Social Security deduction, which is also controlled by your adjusted gross income. So again, by reducing, if you're $6,000, say, or $10,000 over the threshold for the Social Security deduction, and you do a $10,000 QCD, and now you're eligible for the no tax on Social Security deduction, which is another $6,000 or $12,000. That $10,000 QCD could equate to almost $22,000 in deductions. You do still report the QCD on your tax return. If you look at the tax return, I think it's around line 12 or so. There's a line for IRA distributions, and there's an A box that shows everything, and then there's a B box that shows the taxable amount. And you will put the full amount distributed, which will include the QCD, and then the taxable amount will not include it. And it's important, there's nothing on your 1099-R, which is what you get when you have an IRA distribution, that says anything about your QCD. So if you have someone else doing your taxes, you're going to need to make sure that they know that you made a QCD so that they don't include that in your taxes. So I love, like I said, I love these things. They're really powerful from a tax standpoint. And if they apply to you, and again, you're so inclined to support charity, this is a really good way to do it. Another way you can efficiently handle your taxes is through what we call donor advised funds. It's basically a fund or account. It's kind of separated and identified in reference to you as the donor. It's owned by a sponsoring organization. Interestingly, to me, I don't know why, but it can't be a war veterans organization, cannot be the sponsor for a donor advised fund. And you as the donor advise where the distributions of funds will go. You can set them up at most brokerage accounts like Vanguard, Fidelity, or Schwab. You can contribute to these and think of a donor advised fund as a standalone charity. It's a charity that you're going to contribute to that at some point in the future is going to distribute those funds to a charity that you designate. And in most cases, it has the normal charitable contribution limits of 50,000 or 50% or 60% of AGI, basically depending on your exact situation. And as mentioned, the nice thing is you contribute to the donor advised fund in year 0, but you can distribute over the next 10, 15, 20 years, and you get the deduction this year when you contribute to the donor advised fund versus next year when or in the future when you're actually paying the charities. As mentioned, this is a great benefit of accelerating the deduction into a current tax year where your tax bracket is high. Let's say you're working, you're getting close to retirement, you're in a relatively high tax bracket, or more correctly, your second retirement, you're in a high tax bracket, you dump a bunch of money into the donor advised fund. Now you get that deduction when you're in a higher tax bracket. And again, you dole out the money to the charities in the futures. The charity, as mentioned, gets benefits for many years. You can actually invest inside the donor advised fund, grow the funds more, and increase the charitable impact. And all that growth is tax-free because the money is already inside a charitable account. And I have some clients that this becomes a family project or a family event for them. They'll sit down every year and they'll say, what charities do we want to support this year? And the family will discuss it and decide and pay out to the charity. Now, the last thing I want to emphasize on this, though, is that it is a one-way door. Once that money goes into the donor advised fund, you can't change your mind and say, I want it back. You get the deduction in the year 1, so the money has to stay in there, and there's no way to get that money back out. But it can be a very powerful tool to deduct at a higher tax bracket that you'll be in the future and support charities for many years to come. Similarly, donating appreciated assets can be a great way to tax efficiently support charities. We'll take a look at rules and benefits. Generally speaking, you want to have held the asset for at least 1 year so that and that's technically now makes it a long-term, and we generally want to use an appreciated asset, so it'd be a long-term capital gain. It's limited to 30% of your adjusted gross income. In this case, when you donate appreciated assets, you can only deduct 30% against your AGI, and you have to actually transfer the security, the IBM stock or the mutual fund that you have. You don't sell it and then donate it. And what this does is, if you've held that asset for a year and a day or more, you get to deduct the fair market value of that asset on the date of donation, not what you paid for it. So let's say, 10 years ago, you bought some IBM stock for $100 a share. It's been 10 years now, it's worth $200 a share. You donate 2 shares, you get a $400 deduction, even though you only paid $200 for that investment. And you transfer those capital gains to the charity, and charities don't pay taxes. And the IRS never gets the money. And that's one of my favorite things in the world, is to kind of stick it to the IRS a little bit and make sure, minimize the amount that you pay to taxes. This can become very powerful when combined with a donor advised fund. Let's say, let's say you've got this lot of stock, and again, I'll use IBM. My wife used to work for IBM, so I use them a lot in my examples. And you've got this lot of IBM stock that has a very large capital gains on it, and you don't want to sell it because you don't want to pay the taxes, but you don't really want to keep it anymore for whatever reason. Well, what you can do in that case is you donate those appreciated assets to the donor advised fund. You get the deduction. You take the cash that you were going to donate to a donor advised fund, and you could even buy back the IBM stock at that higher basis and again eliminate your taxes on those gains. So it can become very powerful. And then once the funds are inside the donor advised fund, if you want to sell them off, you can. If you want to keep them invested for growth, you can do that as well. Donating appreciated assets, even if you don't itemize, can still help your long-term tax picture. If you donate those funds, you get those gains off your balance sheet and you'll never have to pay taxes on them. You don't get a deduction, but you eliminate the tax on the growth at that you would have if you sold at some point in the future. Then another thing that, again, it can be relatively simple. This one is not too complicated, but it can add up not insignificantly. So I think most of us kind of have a target for charity, and we kind of hit that target every year. And that may not necessarily be the best way to handle things. So if we look here without bunching, we've got our taxpayer here who has $10,000 in state and local taxes, about $15,000 in mortgage interest, and they donate about $10,000 to charity every year. So $35,000 total, and they pretty much do the same thing every year. So they end up with about, over that 2-year period, they end up with deductions of $70,000. But if they bunch their contributions, they contact their charities and say, hey, I'm going to give you your year 1 and year 2 contributions this year, and I'm not going to give you anything next year, so I want you to be ready. So we still have the $10,000 in state and local taxes, the $15,000 in mortgage interest, and now we have $20,000 in charitable contributions. And the next year, you just take the standard deduction of $31,500, which is what it is right now for a married couple. Now when we add those two numbers up, we have $76,500 in total deductions, so about $6,500 more than if you do it evenly each year. And you go $6,500. Well, at a 22% tax bracket, that's about $2,000, about $1,500, $1,600 in reduced taxes, which again is not an insignificant number. So that can be relatively simple thing to do, and you get a bigger tax break, and you haven't given 1 penny more to charity. Speaking of donating to charity, there are a couple significant changes that are going to come into effect starting next year. So starting in 2026, as results of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act that you might want to be aware of. For those of you that don't itemize, you'll be able to deduct some cash only. So no, giving stuff to Goodwill, it has to be cash. And if you're married filing jointly, that could be up to $2,000. And for everyone else, it's $1,000. You may remember back in COVID, we could do this. You were allowed to deduct charitable contributions without itemizing. I think the number was much lower. So about, I think it was around $200 or $300. But now starting in 2026, even if you can't itemize, you can at least deduct $2,000 or $1,000 of cash contributions. Itemizers, those of you who do itemize, next year, things are going to change a little bit. There's going to be a floor on charitable contributions of 0.5% of adjusted gross income. So, for example, if your adjusted gross income is $100,000, your first $500 of charitable contributions are not deductible. So that's going to be a change. And if you're a high earner, that could start to be a significant number. Speaking of high earners, this one affects not just charitable contributions, but all your itemized deductions. If you are in the 37% tax bracket, which is our highest tax bracket, your itemized deductions only reduce your income by 35%. So you pay kind of a 2% penalty for being over that threshold. So, stepping back for a minute, it's, the 20th of November. So I guess we have 41 days for you to think about it. If you itemize and you're a high earner, 2025 is the year to contribute. You want to do it before that floor kicks in and before the itemized deductions get reduced by 2%. Sound like a good time to use a donor advised fund. The last charitable, and I'll hit this one relatively quickly. It's relatively it's not relatively, it is complex, and it's primarily an estate planning tool, but it also can help reduce your income tax planning. And these are different types of trusts. They're called CLATs, CLUTs, CRATs, and CRUTs. And the C in all of them stands for charitable. The L stands for lead. The R stands for remainder. The A and U are either annuity or unit trust. The basic is you set up an annuity with a charity, and either the annuity payments go to the charity or what's left over at the end goes to the charity. And you as a taxpayer gets to deduct the portion that, or the current value of the portion that goes to the charity, whether that's the income that going to the charity or the remainder at the end. So there is a bit of a tax deduction there as well. These are expensive, so you'd probably only want to do it if you have a whole, you're talking about a lot of money, and you're definitely going to need an attorney to help you set this up. And then the last topic is the interfamily or charity begins at home. You can gift your appreciated assets to children or other family members. Right now, for 2025 and 2026, you can gift up to $19,000, and you don't have to do any reporting of any of it. It does have to be a gift of a present interest, which means they can use it right now, so it can't go into a trust or anything like that. If you have adult independent children in lower tax bracket, they may be in a lower bracket or maybe even a 0% bracket. As an example, we're talking taxable income here, so it's after about a $30,000 standard deduction, so about $126,000 of adjusted gross income, which, oh, by the way, is about a major's pay. They're eligible for 0% tax bracket. And then it goes down, you can see the numbers for single and head of household. Also, if you have minor children or children who are basically in college, basically their first $2,700 of investment income is not going to be taxed. If you go over that, then it's taxed at the parent's rate. I don't generally recommend using death as a financial planning or tax planning strategy, but the reality is, if you keep assets in your name and you own them when you die, you get a step up in basis, and the children won't have to pay taxes on the gains that occurred during your lifetime. And then the last thing, again, for children or grandchildren, contributions to 529 plans are often deductible at the state income tax level or at the state tax level. So those are the things I was looking to cover today. I am happy to answer questions. I'm not overly familiar, as I mentioned, with Teams, but I think I can probably work through it. So with that, I'll open it up for questions. Okay, Luke, I see your hand up. I think you just need to unmute your mic.
Hi, thanks very much for this, Curt. I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit about the rules of the road for charitable donations through an IRA at age 59 and a half.
So at 59 and a half, the 59 and a half number is when things no longer become subject to basically early withdrawal penalty. So there is not a mechanism to do the qualified charitable distribution until age 70 and a half. So you would be basically looking at taking in a distribution, declaring it as income, and then taking an itemized deduction if you so itemize. If you're, again, if it's in 2026 and you make a cash contribution, then you may be able to take a deduction without itemizing, but there's no mechanism like the qualified charitable distribution until, unfortunately, age 70 and a half. Did I see something pop up in the chat? I think it was something about the slides. I'm happy to send in my slides. No problem there. I'll get those to somebody in the organization that can get them out. Okay, I think looks like that might be it. Okay, one popped up in chat about age restrictions on donor advised funds. No, you can do that at any age. and again, take advantage. And again, I tend to lean towards brokerages, but you can to set them up. But you can also, I was just talking with one of my colleagues today. You can, and he has done this, where you can, if you've got a favorite university, a lot of them will have donor advised funds, kind of with the implied that you'll be then donating to the college, but no age restriction, and you on that.
All right, Curt, I'm looking through here. I don't see any other questions.
Okay.
I thank you so much for taking the time out. We really appreciate you.
Happy to do it.
All right. Okay, before I do some administrative stuff to wrap us up here, I just wanted to offer Frank and any couple of minutes if you had anything you wanted to say to the group, Frank.
Hey, April, thanks. I appreciate it. Thanks to you and Mike for putting this together. This is, I think these are good forums, and I think more people catch on, they'll be going on to them. Another initiative we're starting probably in January is we're going to be hosting professional development for the JAG Corps. This was a Paul Rogers initiative where, sometimes you hear the JAGs are a barrier to membership in our association. So I think this is a brilliant idea on Paul's part. So we've got about 6 months worth of material. It'll be purely professional development. It's going to be hosted by NGAUS, kind of on our platform, similar to this cohort here too. So exciting times with that, and then also with the strategic planning committee. So stay tuned to that. Bobby Dornbos and Maria Kelly are leading that effort as well. So that's all I have other than any questions of me or the team here. I do want to thank Eric and John for coming on this, and we'll be on anytime you have them for questions, and appreciate everybody's support and your membership. Thank you.
Excellent. And I do very much appreciate you being on here to answer questions. Thank you all for joining us. Just a couple of admin things. I wanted to let you know that our next virtual call right now is scheduled for April 29th from 4 to 5:30. More on the topic to follow. We'll keep you posted. And then also, we're just in an effort to make sure that everyone is getting our information. If you happen to just hear about this through the newsletter, but you did not receive an email, I encourage you to either go on the website and look at there's a blue button that says join/renew/login. You can click on there to update your information, or you can send an email to membership@ngas.org. That gives you an opportunity to update or make sure that your information is up to date. We're trying to make sure that anything we send out is getting to all the right folks. And once again, if you have any issues, concerns, questions, something you want to run by either Mike or myself, you can find us on the NGAUS page, and we are happy to have a dialogue. Again, we thank you all for joining us tonight, and we hope that you have a great Thanksgiving. We look forward to the next time. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.